welcome to the Art of Being Human. You know, there is a link between anxiety and depression, and we've been talking about both and how you manage to get both and how it happens and some things that you can do to help yourself. But I do want to emphasize here that most people who are anxious are also depressed, or most people who are depressed are also anxious. And it is thought by many psychologists that the depression mutes the anxiety, so the anxiety is not quite so strong. And then when the depression becomes really dull, because it's just long-lasting and nothing happens and nothing is exciting anymore, that the anxiety may creep in to mute the depression and make things more active in your life. So it's not unusual to have both. But a lot of times we have both, and it's due to poor relationships. Now, what I went through on the last two segments that I've done is if you were facing people who have personality disorders, if you had a rough life, then what it would do to you, how it would cause you to have fear and anxiety and this kind of thing. So what I want to look at what's involved in having a good relationship. What is it like to have a good relationship? One in which you're not afraid of abandonment, one in which you don't have a low self-concept, one in which you are not being manipulated to feel guilty or manipulated to feel bad about yourself. Well, actually, good relationships are possible. And if you are having a bad relationship, counseling can help. Now, in a good relationship, each person brings something to it. You have two people in the relationship, say a man and his wife, a man and his girlfriend, and each person brings something to the relationship. Each person values and appreciates the other person. And in a good marriage, the two become one, and yet they remain two. And I need to explain to you what that means. The Bible says when two are married, the two become one flesh. You have similar goals, you have similar interests, you work with each other, but you still remain two people. You don't lose your personhood, you don't lose your goals and dreams, you don't lose your individuality when you're married to somebody. You keep those, and you're completely your own person, and yet you've joined up with another person, and so a lot of your goals and your dreams become intertwined, and it's like you're one person. You know, if you talk to people who have been married for years, one person starts off a sentence, the other person can finish it because they're so closely together in terms of their thought processes. They practically know what each other is thinking, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So you have that joining together. And you know, why do we get married to begin with? We are people who have attachments. We are born with the need to attach. And that means attachment to other people, attachment to our parents, attachment to our friends, attachment to groups that we're involved with, attachment, say, even to political parties that we're involved with. We have a need to attach. Now, there are some children, when they're born, some babies that won't attach, and they don't want to be held, and they don't want to be cuddled, and they shrink back from human contact. Those babies are in trouble already, because that's not normal for a human being not to want to attach. So you do get attachment disorders, and people shy away in their aloneness. Now, it's not a problem if you're a quiet, shy person and you like to have a lot of alone time. But when people cannot attach, and they don't want to attach, and they want to be away from other people, that can be a problem. But so when you get married, you join and you are attached, but at the same time you don't lose your individuality. You are the same person as you were before. I can remember I was teasing one of my graduates I was in graduate school, one of my friends who just got married. I said, and I was just teasing him and saying, "Oh, you've lost all your freedom." And he said, "No, Pat, that's not the way it is. I have more freedom than I never had before. If I want to do something and grow, and my wife is there to support me in it. If she wants to do something and grow, start something new, study some other field, I'm there to support her. So we support each other, and we become more closely aligned because we support each other, but we don't lose our individuality. I can do what I want, she can do what she wants, and we are mutually supportive of each other. So I think maybe that's the best definition of maintaining your individuality and yet being one with another person. You are two people becoming one, and yet at the same time you remain two. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Now, the best marriages are when people get married because they love each other, but not because they need each other. And I need to explain that. In a marriage, marriages work out well if each person is able to take care of themselves. If something happened with the marriage, say one partner died or something, they would be able to take care of themselves. A marriage that's based on need, I need you and therefore I want to marry you, that's not a good marriage. And it probably won't last very long. Because if you have a need-based marriage rather than a marriage based on love, what you are doing is going into a marriage expecting your needs to be met. And that's the reason you got married to begin with. Now, a need-based marriage is not based upon valuing the other person. It's not even sometimes based upon love. It's based upon, I have a need and you can take care of my need. Or you have a need and I can take care of your need. Now, sometimes those marriages work out for a while, but there is a problem with them. The love always comes first. If you want to get married, you marry a person that you love, not a person that you need, because then you're shortchanging yourself. If you love a person, things are going to work out, and you can make adjustments, and as things come up, you make adjustments and they work out. But if you're marrying somebody because you need to be taken care of, or somebody marries somebody because they need to take care of somebody else, then that's not going to last, because needs change. Supposing a person has a need to take care of somebody else, so therefore they marry somebody else that needs their care. Now, they're happy with it because they have a need to take care of somebody, and that's going to happen. The person that they marry has a need to be taken care of, and that works out for a while because they married a person that needs to take care of them. But what's going to happen as the years go by, they're going to change. Their needs are going to change. They may not want to be taken care of. They may want to be sufficient in their own way so they can take care of themselves. Or a person may not want to be a caretaker for the rest of their lives. They want to be independent and not have to take care of somebody. And so as the needs change, the relationship changes as well. And sometimes that doesn't work out very well. Now, you have to remember that needs do get taken care of in a good marriage, and that's the way it should be. But that's not the reason why you marry somebody. You marry somebody because you love that person. You don't marry that person because they have a need. And they shouldn't make you feel guilty and cause you to want to marry them because they have a need and you have a need to take care of them. It's just not very good to do it that way. You marry out of love, and the needs do get taken care of, but it's not a need-based marriage. If something happened, each person could take care of themselves, and that's the way that makes it a marriage stronger. Not needing to depend upon somebody for care, but being able to care for yourself, and then you get married because you love a person, and then it all works out, So therefore, you have to consider what a marriage is supposed to be. Now, when anxiety occurs in a marriage, it strangles the marriage. If a person is very, very anxious and they're nervous, they're going to start making demands of the other person, maybe so they can calm down so they won't be so nervous. But that strangles another person. And when it strangles another person, the marriage may fail. It's very, very difficult to have a marriage in which one demands something of the other, and they only make it because the other person is willing to satisfy somebody's demands. That's not a good marriage. So we have to just consider, what do you want in a relationship before you get married, or before you enter maybe even into a friendships. I think friendships grow. You meet a person and you like them and they like you, and you're kind of in sync, and it just kind of grows, and that's a natural thing. It's not a marriage, but friendships can develop into marriage situation. As a matter of fact, sometimes if a person is very anxious and they make demands of a marriage, they are actually addicted to the relationship to get their needs met. Now, if you take marriages, and some of them fail and some of them don't, some of them flourish, and you go and you understand what it is that helps a relationship to flourish as opposed to what causes a relationship to fail, I think you're going to find a lot of need-based behavior on the basis of when a failed relationship occurs. Somebody needs this, you have to do it for me because I need you to. And that's not a good relationship right there. Demanding other people to do what you need for them to do so that they will feel satisfied and less anxious, that's a problem. So when I see marriages, and I've counseled a lot of marriages that are in trouble, it's usually, I need this and you're not giving it to me. And the other person is saying, you're always needing something and I'm always giving to you, and you're never happy because you always need more. So you know right now that's a need-based relationship. It's not a relationship that's based so much on love, although I'm not discounting the fact that love can occur. But differences of opinion causes needs to be different, and then demands to be different, and anxiety tends to strangle a relationship anyway. The happiest people are the people who do their own thing, they grow at their own pace, they support each other, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And if they make a change and need to make a change, they can do it. And it's not a difficult thing. If the anxious one wants to be left alone, I'm nervous, leave me alone. I don't want to have so much of an intense relationship. That can occur too, and that's also bad, because there has to be a place where the couple can be together and want to be together, but there has to be a place where they also can have their privacy if they need their privacy and want their privacy. So there are tons of things that could go on in a relationship that will kill the relationship. And I'm afraid for society, because so many marriages fail. And a lot of people just not getting married to begin with, but they're missing out on a marriage relationship that can be a good relationship. So when I go over the psychodynamics of what happens to people and how they get anxious and how they get nervous and this kind of thing, all of that is going to affect your future relationships. If you're a person that has a lot of fear and you have a fear of abandonment, then what's it going to be like to be married? Might be, well, I'm afraid that so-and-so is going to leave me. I'm afraid that I'm going to be abandoned because I never will be able to meet their needs to the point where they don't have that fear. Fears have to be handled, and fears have to be worked with and controlled or understood so that they don't take control of a relationship. Otherwise, the relationship will be a problem, and that would be something that you don't want. An anxious person sometimes wants to be left alone. The anxious person maybe wants to put demands on the other one. I need this, I need this, I need that. And then when children come along, the emphasis should be on how do you raise a child to be a happy child, to be a child that's comfortable with their life, raise a child that's trusting of their parents, that doesn't have a fear of abandonment, that feels fine in the home, that has a lot of fun and a lot of learning and all of that without fearing that their parents are either going to be punitive or the parents are going to be separated. No wonder they feel like it's their fault. They feel like it's their fault because they can't control an adult situation. Something's gone wrong. They don't understand what's gone wrong. And the parents are sometimes too quick to either cause them to believe that they are to blame for it, or even if they don't do that, the child is a very expert child at absorbing blame, and they just do it naturally. So they have to understand, and they have to be coaxed, and they have to be told, it's not your fault. Whatever is happening to mommy and daddy is not your fault, and you didn't do anything wrong. So you have to be aware of what's going on in the terms of the family dynamics, to be a help to them, and hopefully to save the marriage. Should a marriage be saved? Well, if there's no abuse, then why not? Because if they have a child to raise, a child needs both a mother and a father. But things just sometimes don't work out. In a good marriage, each person is going to be supportive of the other person as they grow. Now, what happens if something goes wrong in a marriage? And all of that energy that they have, that they use to grow, is going to stop. And the growth will stop, and the energy instead is going to be placed on trying to maintain the relationship. You see what happens in relationships. If the relationship is good, all that energy that they have goes toward their growth, which is a good thing. But if something happens, and there are problems in the marriage, and it becomes not compatible like it was, then what's going to happen to the energy that they have? They're going to try to maintain the relationship, and all of the energy is going to go into maintaining the relationship if they can, rather than to growth. So the growth stops. And of course, a child feels all of this, and they feel usually like they did something wrong. Now, I hope for anybody who's listening to this would be a help, because if you have a relationship with a spouse and it's not as good as it should be, you should go to somebody who can help you unravel what's going on, because it can be very complicated. And then if there are health problems involved, then you see that even makes it more complicated. People feel guilty because they can't maintain a relationship when one of them is sick, say with a long-term life-threatening illness, and that causes more stress upon the marriage. What are people's fears? I think if it's single or married, what are people's fears? A lot of it is going to be, I have symptoms, I can't cope with the symptoms, I'm going to have to cope with them alone. There's not going to be anyone to help me. And in a marriage, there should be people to help you. But what if you're single? What if you're married and something happens to a spouse and they end up with a life-threatening condition? Or if it's not a life-threatening condition, maybe it's a condition that's never going to stop. Like one of them becomes paralyzed because they were in a devastating auto accident, or somebody fell off a roof or something, and now they're paraplegic, and now they can't do anything for themselves because they're permanently paralyzed. How does a couple function when they have a devastating event that happens? How do they maintain their relationship? Can they maintain their relationship? Well, of course, there has to be changes. So when you're dealing with anxiety and depression, it may be that part of it is due to a life-threatening illness or an accident or maybe a death. Now, the next things that I'm going to be going into it will start next segment because I don't have enough time to start it now, is widowhood. What is it like to recover from being a widow or to recover from being a widower? And what if your spouse passes on? And then you're left alone because you have no husband, you have no wife, because they have passed on. Then that's a whole separate thing that I want to get into. How do you make that right? How do you heal from that and become a whole person again? We're interested in helping people to become whole. And as it turns out, most widowers, most men who have lost their wives through death, want to marry again. And they want to marry somebody that's a little younger than themselves. And the reason being, as you look into it, the reason being that if they're the older one, then they may suffer an illness that leads to their death at some point. And they want to have somebody around, a spouse around, to help take care of them as they're going through it. Now, most women, after they become widowed, when they finally get themselves together, and it may take a couple of years or so to do that, they usually decide that they don't want to marry again. At first they may want to, but they decide they don't want to because they've already helped their husbands who passed on through their final illnesses and through their final conditions, whatever it was, and they were happy to do so because they love their husbands, but that doesn't mean they want to do it again. And so as a result, they decide that they want to stay single. And one of the things that I found interesting when I was counseling, because most people say, oh, the women want to get married, they want to have their husbands and they want to get married. But I found out that wasn't the way it was. When I was counseling a lot of couples, the women were saying, I want to wait, I'm not sure, I want to make sure this is right first, where the guys were saying, let's get married, we love each other, why not get married? And it was the women that were holding back and saying, I don't know, I want to wait, I want to make sure about it. But the husbands who wanted, or the future husbands, wanted wanted for them to get married. So there is a difference. You know, when I was in high school, everyone was saying, well, the girls want to get married. They want to start their families and all of that. But the boys want to wait, but the girls want to get married. But that's not what I found out when I was counseling. It's the girls who want to wait and the men who want to get married. So I'm going to close it here because I can't start anything new. We'll go into widowhood and what it's like and how people recover from that and the process that they go through to become well again, because that's a whole segment of our society in which we need to have people handling anxiety. How do you get through all of that and become a normal and whole person again? So we'll start that with the next segment. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.